Sound check 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Peter Pan pops the pipe. Peter Pan. Yeah. Hello, lovers, and welcome back to Starring Cupid, the podcast that talks about your favorite or least favorite romantic couples and pairings in films and movies. It's me, your boy, Summerdotics, nothing more, nothing less, from the east, not the west, big budget, bigger chicks. And today, we are speaking about another non-romantic movie, A Quiet Place. And who are we talking about in A Quiet Place? None other than that couple whose names you probably don't even know because they never speak because it's a quiet place. If you can't tell from the whispering, I'm trying to, capture the thing. Sorry. So, we're going to speak about Evelyn and Lynn Abbott, the main characters in John Krasinski's A Quiet Place. I wanted to talk about them because, first and foremost, I'm a huge coward. I hate scary movies. They don't even have to be horrors. Even thrillers are borderline not for me. I'm a coward. But I enjoyed this movie so much. And it felt like I wanted to show people how wonderful their marriage was, because I feel like in horror movies we don't really talk about the romance between characters. And this couple, I mean, they're going through a lot, but they managed to give us such a wonderful, wholesome, healthy marriage. And what's the point of making this podcast if I can't talk about couples that I enjoy? You know? Let's get into it without further ado. It's Evelyn and Lee. A Quiet Place was made in 2018 and is directed by John Krasinski. This was his debut film, as most people know him mostly from acting. It was written by Brian Wood and Scott Beck, and then Krasinski jumped on board and changed parts of their story to form what we see today as the full film. There's a lovely video essay that I watched once from a YouTube channel called Lessons from the Screenplay. And they were talking about the script, and the writers spoke about how they included the sounds for each scene within the script. Like if you read the dialogue, what little dialogue they do have, they'd make an effort to include those little moments and little sounds that we hear throughout the entire film. And I think that's just great because their use of the sound created such a thrilling and suspenseful movie. At any point in time when you watched it, the sound kind of conveyed the tension and the danger of the situation, which I really loved. Krasinski has said in multiple interviews that this film was kind of a love letter to his children, showing them how far he would go to keep them safe. And I think that's beautiful, and it's part of the reason why I really wanted to talk about this film. Because when you hear that from him, you put aside the fact that this movie's scary as shit, and you remember that, this was literally made with love. This was made with the intention to show people love. I think that's super cute, and it's worth this podcast speaking about it. We have to mention a special mention. I kind of touched on it in the beginning when I referenced the script, but alongside Marco Beltrami, there was 34 people involved in the sound department for this movie, and those people worked hard. Like, Beltrami was in charge of the music for the film, but there's so many little sounds. Like I said, there's so many little sounds and sound effects that happen throughout the film
the team that was in charge of that, they did a splendid job. So I just had to mention them. I have to shout out to them. They deserve the credit for this movie, or they deserve some credit for this. They deserve their equal. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. They speak a lot more about how the sound effects, the action, and the movie as a whole in the video that I mentioned above. I'm going to try and post a link to it either on our Twitter or Tumblr or both, mostly because I love the YouTuber in question. Their work is amazing. But also because I feel like if you watch this movie, you'll appreciate the video essay. And then by watching the video essay, you'll appreciate the movie more. So, wonderful. On to our cast. I mentioned before that we have our director, John Krasinski, also playing the leading man, Lee Abbott. We know Krasinski from a lot of things, but most famously, he is known for playing Jim on the American version of The Office. Now, lovers, I have a confession. I need you guys to be okay with this. Like, I need you guys to not cancel me, or like to not just turn off this whole thing right now. I have never seen a single episode of The Office. It's not one of those things where I'm like, ew, The Office is so overrated. Like, it's not. I can't judge something that I've never watched. But also, it's never happened. No one has given it to me. No one has directed me to watch it. I've also myself never felt compelled to watch it. And I need a lot of motivation to watch anything. I'm the worst, which is why I never call myself a cinephile, because I'm the worst. So forgive me for not knowing. I understand a lot of the jokes, but I will not try to pretend to talk about it. So if you're a Jim fan, I'm so sorry. So sorry. We also have the wonderful and incomparable Emily Blunt, and she stars alongside him as Evelyn Abbott, Lee Abbott's wife. You know her from Devil Wears Prada, Edge of Tomorrow, The Girl on the Train, Mary Poppins. The list is endless. I'm saying it like the way I'm saying it because the list is endless. This woman has range, and she's been in the game for quite some time. I love Emily Blunt. There's not much more to say. I love her. There isn't a huge cast in this one, but I do want to talk about the actors that played the Abbott children, and that's Millicent Simmons and Noah Jupe, I think. And they were brilliant in this. I've seen Jupe in other projects, and I knew that he was good, but I've never seen Simmons, and she was amazing. They're both so very talented, and I was shocked to find out that they both are younger than me. I don't know if this is a sign of me not accepting that I'm old, but I just didn't expect them to be younger than me. But they're brilliant. The point of what I'm saying is they're brilliant. They're very talented. After this, I wanted to support anything that they were in afterwards, and I'm still prepared to support them in anything that they're involved in afterwards. Wonderful children. If you have never seen this film, firstly, I would like to suggest that you do. Not because it's like you have to have seen it because it was one of those very big films in like the 2018 was one of those major films getting like a lot of critical acclaim and stuff. You should watch it because it's a good movie. If you're like me and you're a super coward, I understand, but I promise you won't regret watching it. So if you're those people that haven't watched it, the basic plot is it's about this family in a post-apocalyptic world that's been taken over by these alien/monster things that are super sensitive to sound. They have to essentially live in silence to survive. Evelyn and Lee have 3 children in this movie. Their eldest is deaf, so the family communicates mainly in American Sign Language. I have not yet seen the sequel because no one else has, thanks to COVID and capitalism. So I'll only be speaking about this movie, and I apologize in advance and profusely, but there's going to be spoilers throughout this entire episode, because I tried when I was working out how I would talk about this. there were a few ways I could talk about it without spoiling the plot, and the only way I can talk about this couple at length is if I spoil the plot. So I'm so sorry. I mean, you knew what you were getting yourself into, but I apologize. This is just going to be spoilers through and through. So without wasting any more of your time, let's get into Lee and Evelyn Abbott, one of my favorite horror movie couples / just my favorite married fictional couple. Horror movies aren't usually the best place to find healthy romantic relationships, and I think it's because there's this idea that in horror that having romance takes away from the fear factor of movies. Like, they will have relationships and like couples in horror movies, but we'll barely hear anything about them, or we'll have to rely on their word of mouth that, oh, this is a couple, they are together, and you'll just have to believe it. They're not really working hard on writing it into the story, or the actors aren't really working hard on showing it. And that's fine. I get it. It's the genre. It's hard to go against the genre. I doubt that people are going to watch horror movies to find some Cinderella story. Or maybe they are. I don't know. But they're not wrong for not putting emphasis on the romance. I do, however, as the world's biggest coward, enjoy watching scary movies that are more than just scary. I enjoyed watching this couple on screen and just like seeing how they are, and it made the scariness worth it. It made it worth the jump scares and the fear of it all, because I was focused on this family and this married couple. Evelyn and Lee are in a weird situation. They're in this dystopian world with the sole mission to protect their children from these things, these unknown things that they themselves aren't really sure about. And I think they survived for as long as they did because they work so well together as a partnership. If we're taking away marriage from this, think of it like a partnership. They are a good team together. There's this unity that they have where they're both pulling their weight. They're supporting the people in their family that need the support. They are being emotionally available for each other and comforting each other through this weird thing. I'll just keep referring to it as a thing, because how do you prepare yourself? How do you prepare yourself for such a specific but also unpredictable situation? Because it's wild. They find themselves in such a wild situation, but they're there for each other, and I really love that. It's their unity is damn near perfect. Their partnership is damn near perfect. What we're being shown essentially is just like a healthy marriage in a terrible scenario. This partnership was so great that it made me wish that we got to see flashbacks to what it was like before there was this apocalypse. It's so scary. Oh, sorry, like on a personal note, it's so scary calling this movie an apocalypse situation, because it came out in 2018, right? But the story is set in 2020. And it was funny in 2018. It was like, oh my gosh, wow, imagine that. But now it's a bit too close to home. Maybe we won't have like hypersensitive monsters that kill us for making sound, but anything could happen at this point with 2020. That's a personal note. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Most of the scenes in this movie are focused on this family and how they work and how they live day to day. And then maybe there are 3 scenes of Evelyn and Lee just being together and not being parents, not being people trying to survive. They're just married people, like together. And one of my favorite of these scenes is when Lee is in the basement and he's working on something for his daughter. And then Evelyn comes down and she stands behind him and she kind of watches him work for a bit. and then she physically pulls his mind away from work and kind of gestures to him like, hey, let's have a moment, let's you and me, let's just have a moment right here. And the scene is absolutely silent. Like, what you hear as a viewer is absolute silence while this whole thing is happening. And then Evelyn gives Lee the other because she has earphones in that are obviously plugged to something that still lets you play music. Would Spotify and iTunes like just stop if we were under attack in any form? Sorry, this is back, come back. So she gives him the other earphone, and as soon as he puts it in his ear, we hear what they hear, and it's as if we are in the moment with them. The whole room is just filled with the sound, but it's safe because we know that they're the only two that can hear it. So we're feeling safe and we're feeling warm, and now we're about to experience what is so romantic. It's romantic because it's so intimate and it's so quiet. They're not really dancing. Like, I don't want to say that they were slow dancing. They essentially sway and just embrace one another for the duration of the song or even longer. And there's an intimacy in that they're not saying anything, they're not really doing anything, they're not worried about what's happening around them. It's just them. It's just the two of them in this moment, in this room, sharing in each other, just connected. I don't know, connected. I like the way I just did right now. Every time that scene comes, I'll just let out this exhale of, wow, this is a moment. Personally, like, I'm never gonna get married for my own reasons, but that scene was good promo. When I saw that scene, I was like, wow, marriage sounds cool. I don't know, maybe guys, I don't know, maybe, and then I get over it, but it's great promo. Love that scene. And the characters can't speak a lot, so a lot of the acting happens in people's faces and in what they're doing and their actions. Like, yes, they can sign to one another if they have to say things to each other, but it's as if living in this world made them focus on showing rather than telling. And what I mean is that we rarely hear this couple exchange words of affection, but we see the affection in the things that they do for one another. Because we're not distracted by what they're saying, we have to look at what they're doing. And they do a lot for one another. For instance, Lee, and this is another wonderful thing about him. Lee is one of those Bob the Builder husbands. So he's constantly making gadgets and gizmos to make their new lives livable. And I'm sorry, it's hard to talk about this without like just experiencing a moment of complete thirst for both Lee and also kind of John Krasinski. Because, okay, imagine for a moment that this is what was happening. They weren't in an apocalypse. It was a normal world, like I said, as if they were just normal people, but still the same characters, but in a normal world. And imagine that Lee still had all of these characteristics and all these wonderful things about him. Lee is a good husband. Like, he's wonderful husband material. He's loving. He's great at building stuff. He's rugged as hell. And he has this, like, what I can only describe as this luxurious full beard situation that's going on. I don't know if it's because of the apocalypse. I don't know if that's like his regular look, but it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Sorry, I just had to take that moment. I just had to share that back to what I was saying about building stuff. Yes. So Evelyn would always be seen in the movie. She's always using these little things, these little gizmos that he'd make for everyone. And maybe it's just me. Maybe it's my rose-tinted sunglasses that just sees the cuteness in everything. It felt like every time she used something he made, she would kind of smile, or she'd be not unhappy. But it was cute because it was kind of like, oh, imagine you have this husband that is doing these lovely things for you. Like, how lovely is he that he made this thing easier for you? How lovely is it that someone is so thoughtful and considers you? And I know I'm saying this, and people are like, well, yeah, that's a husband. Listen, the bar is low, and the bar will always be low, because you'd like to believe that your spouse would do all these wonderful things for you if you were at any inconvenience of any kind. But that's not today's chat. What I'm talking about today is fictional relationships, please. Unfortunately, there is no love without tragedy. Every horror needs tragedy. And like right in the beginning, we see them as they experience what is a very heartbreaking death in their family. And you get the live reaction of when it happened, but we don't get to see how they deal with it afterwards. We only see kind of the aftermath of it all. But you can see that this thing has affected everyone in this family. It affects everyone differently, but everyone is moved and everyone is different. Everyone has changed, and it even causes a little conflict between Lee and his daughter. But there's only one scene where we see Lee and Evelyn speak about it, and it's the only audible conversation between them throughout the entire film. And I think it's one of my favorite moments in the whole film. It takes place after Evelyn has given birth, and they're in the baby bunker, essentially what I consider the baby bunker. And Evelyn is breaking down, and she's blaming herself for the death of their youngest. Lee is there reassuring her that it was no one's fault, and they're just opening up to each other. They get this moment of shared mourning and being emotionally present for the other person. It's beautiful. It's beautiful because it confirmed every assumption I'd made about this couple throughout the movie. The love we were being shown was put into that one conversation, and the conversation is mostly about how far would a parent go for their child, but in their love for their children, you see the love that they have for one another. In that everything happens in that one conversation for me. And it's funny because that conversation ends with Evelyn making him promise to look after the children no matter what, which is ironic now, but she needed to say that. She needed to say that so that we knew, and then also to help with what happens next, which is so heartbreaking. It was so heartbreaking. I'm laughing, but I'm crying, I must say that usually in horror movies, I walk in there and I'm like, okay, everyone is gonna die. Everyone here is vulnerable to death. Don't get attached. Don't prepare yourself to lose your faves. And I did that with this movie as well. Yet there was a difference when Lee I can't even talk about it. There was a difference when Lee sacrificed himself to save the children. I was close to tears because forget about what he says before he does it. It was the whole thing of, this is what he's always wanted to do, is protect his family and his children. There's only so much he can do, and right now this is the thing that he has to do. And it was like, oh no, we don't want you to go, but this is what has to be done in this moment. And that was so sad for me. Maybe I'm the loser, but I was so emotionally attached to everyone in that family. So regardless of who went, I would have cried, but I just like the way that he was the one that did it. It was the full circle moment that I wish we didn't have to have, but we needed to have. Regardless, this couple did what they had to do, and possibly more. I appreciate seeing healthy marriages and like happy families where people don't hate each other and all those other weird stereotypical tropes. I mean, it's sad that it had to happen during an apocalypse, but I don't think I would have wanted the story any other way, honestly, because it ended up being wonderful and the beautiful, horrifying thing that we have today. It's time again to talk about our likes and dislikes with this movie. This portion of the show is going to be greatly skewed because after rewatching this, I realized that there's more things that I liked than I disliked, and even the things I disliked, you're going to see they're minimal. You can ignore them. When it comes to likes though, I firstly and most importantly love how the score and the sound adds to the fear. I've watched this movie 3 times in total. Once with my sister, once when I was alone, and once with a group of my friends. Every time that I watched it, there was silence. Like silence. The power that has. I really do wish that I had seen it in cinemas, but unfortunately life be the way that it be, because I wanted to experience that power on a larger group of people, especially people that I didn't know. Because like how do you do that? How do you invoke that kind of emotion? How do you invoke that kind of stress in a person with just sound? Like I said, I've watched this 3 times, and by now I know what happens, what will happen next, everything. I know this movie back to front, but every time I watch it, I find myself holding my breath, like I'm the one that's in it, like I'm the one that's gonna get caught. I just freeze, and it's fantastic. Once again, big shout outs to the people that were behind the music and the sound. Brilliant. You guys have power over me, apparently. And then I also liked that there is wonderful acting across the cast, but I have to take a moment to talk about Emily Blunt. Emily, honey, I am an actress. Blunt did so great. So great. She has one of the best looks of terror I've ever seen. Maybe it is because I can't imagine having to quietly give birth, but her face said everything that needed to be said in that moment. Everyone was great, but man, shout outs to Emily Blunt. Get it, girl. Wow. I'd like to also send a special shout out to John Krasinski's beard. It did a wonderful job. I want it to continue with its good work because it is stupendous. Like, again, a moment of unfiltered thirst for him in this movie. He was so fine for no reason. Respectfully, he was so fine. The easiest way to get me to find a man attractive is to cast him as a good husband, because there is nothing, okay, well, there's a few things, but there's nothing more attractive than a man that loves his wife. And he did more than just love his wife. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna talk about this. I just need you guys to know that this is how I feel, respectfully. Yeah. Another thing I liked, this was a low bar, which is why I probably put it last, but I do appreciate Krasinski for being adamant about casting someone that is deaf to play his daughter. It was written into the script already, but we know Hollywood. Hollywood is notorious for writing in characters from marginalized groups, and then they'll go and they'll cast someone that is not affected at all. Like, they do it so many times. It's becoming kind of like, okay, you guys just don't want to at this point. So I do enjoy the fact that he went and said, no, we have to do this. If we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this right. I want the cast and the family to also speak American Sign Language. And it worked out perfectly because Simmons is amazing. So I don't understand Hollywood's problem with not casting the right people. Like, get a grip. Once again, the bar is low, but I mean, we're gonna raise the bar. Come on, do something. And then things I didn't like. Ironically, this is about the daughter. This is such a petty thing. Guys, I didn't even want to talk about this, but it would feel wrong to just only talk about the good. But this is such a petty thing to pick at. I don't like how Reagan, the eldest, the daughter that I keep mentioning, her name is Reagan. Reagan? Anyway, she was having this like attitude during such a bad time. Like, it was not the time for that. I get it, apocalypse or not, I'm still gonna be a teenager, and they had this conflict that went way beyond the story, and it was important for them to sort it out. I get that, but it was just oh my gosh, like the whole time I kept having to fight this thing of me going, oh my god, this isn't the time to fight. Like, this is not the time to be a teenager. But you know what, I get it, I completely get it. We've reached the end of the show, unfortunately, so it's time for my favorite segment. You wouldn't believe this is my favorite segment because I like mess. It's Who's Your Fave? This week was particularly difficult because I tried to be on theme with the couple that I'm speaking about every week, and because this is essentially a horror movie, I wanted to make it horror themed, but I don't watch horror movies. So it was like what do I do? Who do I talk about? Who do I pit against each other when I know nothing? But I think I found a suitable couple for this week. And in this corner, we have, from the popular Conjuring franchise, Lorraine and Ed Warren. I've never watched the movies. Like, this is needless to say. You don't need to know me to know that I've never seen them. All I know is that they're married, they fight spirits. Judging from the couple of pictures that I always see, they seem like they're good. I don't know. You guys will decide. And this week, they're going against the most iconic doll couple after Bobby and Ken. It's Tiffany and Chucky from the Chucky franchise. Chucky is one of those movies that I watched when I was much younger, terrified out of my pants, watching through my fingers and my hands. But I do remember this couple, and they were a bit toxic, I'm not gonna lie. I can't remember the finer details, so I can't even bring up examples. But they're iconic. No one will ever forget Tiffany and Chucky, you know? So it's up to you though. I have no say in the matter as the maker of this poll. It's up to you. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear who you think is your favorite cutthroat couple. And that's the show for tonight. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget that we now drop on Fridays and Mondays. I'm going to try to keep this up for as long as I possibly can. Bear with me, I am a flake. But that's how things are going to be structured from now on, so check out for that. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Starring Cupid, on Tumblr at Starring Cupid Podcast, and we'll just meet each other there. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for staying with me. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful life. Bye.